All right, so I'm here with Rashawn Lamar Jackson. He's a conservative. He's a Christian. Some would say he's outspoken, but I think he speaks perfectly. He was a lawyer, and he is now training to be a dentist. He's got three degrees,
Two.
two degrees. Working on your
Yeah.
third. Okay.
Yeah.
I I wanted to bring him on the show because he's a very interesting character. He's got a lot of things to say about a lot of issues, and also anybody that's that motivated is definitely worth listening to. Say, hey, how you doing?
It was motivation. Kind of ebbs and flows, but I keep it for the most part. Yeah.
Some people don't even have it. So
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
you recently went to Israel. You want to tell us a little bit about that during this whole
Yes.
crisis?
I just came back from Israel maybe about 3 weeks ago, approximately, and this is my third time there in 5 years. I have friends there, uh, people from Brooklyn, New Jersey, pretty much two
Sure.
places that I say I dually grew up in. I grew up in New Jersey from like birth to age 17, but I didn't become a man until I moved to Brooklyn at age 17. I left Brooklyn at age 25. So I
Okay.
say I grew up in New Jersey and I grew up in Brooklyn. But yeah, I've been to Israel 3 times, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem both times. I haven't been in much of the interior of the country outside of the area that you pass through when you're going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Okay. How are the
Uh,
people there? I mean, I know we live in Jersey, or we grew. I grew up in Jersey. You live in Virginia now,
yeah,
so I've met plenty of Jewish people, but I've also met plenty of Israelis, and they awesome people. Have a lot of great conversations. They see the world very similar to the way I see the world, and so I imagine it'd be an excellent trip. Uh, what do
yeah,
you do when you're
definitely.
there?
I eat falafel, um, shawarma, tabbouleh, baklava. Um, so what else do I eat when I go there? Latkes, like whatever Hebrew Jewish food I can get. But I've done this pub crawl a few
Okay.
times. I actually did it every time I've gone. I've done it. It's a pub crawl that they do out of downtown Tel Aviv. And you kind of bounce around to like 3 different bars and 3 different clubs until like 4 o'clock in the morning or however late you want to hang out. I kind of called it a night earlier than most people do, but basically, you know, I don't really drink, so just watching everybody drink and party and dance and that crazy. I met a lot of people, Jews from Canada, Germany, Egypt, Brazil, a lot from Brooklyn, a lot from New Jersey, California, just from all over the place. And then other people like me who aren't Jewish, but they're visiting, people from Italy I've met there, all over the place. I mean,
Love the food.
yeah, Tel Aviv's a good tourist spot, and the food's really cheap because, I mean, it's, how much are they going to try? How going to charge you for fried chickpeas? It can't be but so expensive, right?
Right.
Tabbouleh is pretty much parsley and some bulgur wheat and a few tomatoes chopped up. So they can't charge you so much, but yeah, you can eat for cheap out there, and it's just a good time. Um, there's a lot of Ethiopian people there, Ethiopian Jews.
Hmm.
It's a cool place. I like it.
Um,
Yeah.
so what's the climate there like? What do they think about everything that's going on?
Um,
Do they support our president since our countries are kind of
well,
intertwined in a way?
well, for the most part, you've got the same kind of issues here that you have in Israel. So you've like in Israel, they have a left wing. They've got the left in
Hmm.
Israel, people who hate Israel or dislike Israel. They want Israel destroyed. They side with the extremist Muslims. They believe that they themselves are occupiers, kind of like the white guilt crowd here, but they're
Yeah.
like Israeli Jews who um, they're just like, like I call them subversives.
Well, that would be, you
You
know.
know, so you have that there too, but they have an extremely small amount of power in Israel. An extremely small amount of power. The left wing has a whole lot more power in the United States than they do in Israel. In Israel, they're pretty much like fringe, like small percentage, and most of them are concentrated in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv
Okay.
is like more secular. The rest of the country in Jerusalem is more, it's more religious, and basically Jerusalem is where, in most of the country, but I'm going to talk about Jerusalem. Jerusalem's where everything shuts down when the sun goes down Friday until the sun comes back up Saturday. So once the Sabbath hits, it's like public transportation shut down. Well, that's shut down across the country, but Jerusalem, everything shut down. You're not buying anything. You're not catching a cab. You're not doing anything. Like, you are where you are. You're going to be with your family. You're going to sit in that one place where you're going to be. You're going to eat. You're going to chill. You're going to party with your family, celebrate the Sabbath. And it's very observant, very conservative. Tel Aviv is where you've got, like, dudes making out with one another. They don't really practice the faith.
Yeah.
They're just like, whatever. It's like being in Manhattan, but it's in Israel.
Or any other metropolis where people get paid way too much to do nothing of any importance.
Yeah, but it's Tel Aviv isn't as trashy as New York City is. Like, you don't see. I know people are gonna get offended, but whatever. Like, in Tel Aviv, you don't see loads of women walking around like covered with tattoos all over their necks and all down their arms, and you don't see all that. Tel Aviv is definitely secular and more quote unquote liberal. I don't like to use that term because today's liberals aren't really liberal.
No, not at all.
They're more like authoritative, totalitarian. You do as I say. But Tel Aviv is more artsy, more fashion oriented, more singles, more partying, more drinking. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Well, it's not a bad thing to have in a country too, because it also expresses different thoughts of ideas. You got to have that.
Yeah, definitely.
But like you said, some places here it's a little much. Now we've talked before in the past. I remember a couple of years ago we were texting about how we got red pilled and how we formed our ideas. Now we both grew up in Linden and in part of our life in Linden and part of our life in New York. And like I told you, I was sitting there watching everybody around me get totally friggin' screwed.
Yeah.
And them not realizing that that's exactly what they're putting in office. And so it was quick for me. You want to explain to the listeners what really makes you speak out against this subversive left, because you do a lot of it and you make a lot of sense and people don't like it, especially you being a Black American. It kind of annoys the hell out of them. So
so for me it's kind of a no-brainer. It's not really hard to tell, like Nas says in that album, it ain't hard to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically like I grew up in a Southern Baptist Christian household, and pretty strict household. My pops was in the Korean War. My household is very like regimented, and certain things were just not allowed.
Okay.
And then I went off to college in Brooklyn, of course, at age 17, and I stopped going to church, which wasn't allowed in my house. In my household, you pretty much you had to go to church every Sunday, or you couldn't play outside, or you couldn't ride your bike, or you couldn't ride your skateboard. If I couldn't ride my skateboard, during my skater years, I'd rather just be dead. So basically, it was always church, every weekend. So moved to the city, didn't have to listen to anybody. Started to do my own thing. Didn't really go to church. Didn't really pray until I got in trouble. And then it got to the point where I realized, like, dude, you need to pray more often than only when you're in trouble or only when you need something.
Okay.
Another thing is, and I'm not trying to be like Mr. Bible Thumper because I'm definitely not like perfect or anything, but um, I just noticed that when I fell outside of that path, like things started to fall apart rather quickly.
Okay.
Um, and I kind of like, I don't know, I was on a path that could have easily caused me a whole lot of trouble. So, long story short, I kind of went back to my roots on that level of it all. Um, I learned about like paying tithes and how it helps. I started to see how it helps. That's another element of it. But I don't know that that's really political. It kind of is in this day and age, but it's really not. Um, but as far as like being conservative, like it it made sense. It started to make sense to me because there was stuff in my face that I could see clearly
Sure.
that no one could tell me I wasn't seeing because it was right in my face. Like I probably started realizing that I was conservative probably at around age 20, which is kind of young to start having those thoughts. But it became clear to me that I wasn't like everyone else that I was hanging out with in New York City. For instance, uh, I remember having a discussion with a girl that I dated from like probably like 12th grade, Linden High School, like senior year of high school, up until like age 22. And we were just talking about like the public school systems, and her mentality was like, well, every school district across this country should be equal. You shouldn't have like some school districts where you know they have like the best teachers and the best books, and then you have other school districts where they have old books and teachers keep quitting and it's just a disaster, blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, on a certain level, like we would all like that. We would all like them all to be equal, but that's just not possible because a utopia just doesn't exist. And then I got into it with her and talked about how I tried to make her look at it in a different way. I basically said, hey, you look at it, it's the tax dollars that pay for the books, it's the tax dollars that pay the salaries for the schools, the tax dollars that build a school. I said, if you are living in an area where a lot of the men don't want to work and they don't work, and they work off the books selling weed, selling crack, selling coke, selling
They're not paying taxes.
bootleg CDs, exactly. Bootleg baseball caps, incense, and just hustling or whatever. Ultimately, they're not paying taxes. So what does that mean? It's a smaller tax pool, which means that the school system has less funds accessible to it. I tried to make her understand that, and she just couldn't wrap her head around it. I think she refused to wrap her head around it, and then it became like an emotional thing where it became like personal insults. That's kind of what they do when you try to make them see things logically and
Sure.
see like how things trickle into other things. I couldn't get her to see that. And I also tried to get her to see like, okay, if you've got like one neighborhood where it's like all solid families, and it's
Yep.
like okay, this guy's married to her, they have a kid together, um, they have two kids together. They stay married. They work. They pull their money. They stay in their home. This guy does the same thing. The guy up the block does the same thing, and everybody's doing that. You have solid families where, like, if you have two parents working, um, that's one pool of money. Um, you have a situation where you know it's just more stable as opposed to the areas where that often it goes hand in hand that often have the very bad school districts. So what do you always see consistently? Single mom, single
Yep.
mom, single mom, single mom, single mom,
Yeah.
which again usually creates less money for the tax pool
Yeah.
because I mean my 9-year-old could figure out that in a situation where you have two working parents, there's going to be more money usually than a situation where there's one working parent. And another problem is that a lot of these women, these single moms, not all of them, but a lot of them in these bad neighborhoods, they don't have education as far as like bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctors.
So to make ends meet, they got to work 2, 3 jobs, or
exactly.
there's just one.
So then that trickles down to kids being unsupervised. Dad's not around. That's less discipline in the house, and you end up with, not all the time, because people will say, oh, well, I know of a single mom who raised a doctor. Yeah, it happens occasionally. Like, there are no absolutes, but generally that's not the best situation. So I just started seeing things for what they were, and I think that what also made me become more conservative, and people might say Republican. I kind of have issues with the Republican Party not being conservative, but if I'm going to vote 99% of the time, I'm going to vote Republican. But I lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn for probably about half the time I was in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
A little less than half the time. So I got to see firsthand the result of modern day liberalism in the Black community.
Yes.
Specifically, not Bedford-Stuyvesant today, where you have these little soy boys from Oregon and Austin,
latte,
Texas.
whatever.
Yeah. I'm talking about real Bedford-Stuyvesant, like Bedford-Stuyvesant, where like
the riots and
right.
Yeah.
I'm talking Bedford-Stuyvesant, where the only white people you saw in the neighborhood were usually police officers and fire department. Not today's Bedford-Stuyvesant. But anyway, so I lived there in the 90s, and I saw firsthand that modern day liberalism is not the way to go, and it should be freaking abandoned, mass abandoned.
Yeah, I really don't care what people do, as long as they don't affect other people. But it seems to me that everything that they quote unquote fight for isn't for the freedom to do it, because they already have it. It's to push it on other people.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, like, you look at all the policies and all the things that they promote, and in no situation in history has it ever turned out good if actually practiced by the vast majority of the people. I mean, you can even see that here, in any little area that they've been allowed to control for decades. It just hasn't worked out well. I mean, you've got the extremely rich, people who, money's nothing to them. Then you have like the constantly struggling, trying to get by.
Mansions in South Orange,
yeah,
2 blocks away from Vailsburg.
Exactly. So I mean, what's crazy is it's weird. It's like the white liberal elites, like, they feel like they're justified in their how can I put it? Like, the white liberal elites are some of the most racist people you'll ever run across. Period.
Absolutely.
But their racism is a racism of low expectations.
Yes.
A lot of times it's a racism when they own companies and own firms. They rarely ever hire blacks. And then they justify it, or they make themselves feel better about what they've done and their lifestyles they've created. And their exclusive kind of walls they have built around themselves. They make themselves feel better by voting for the party that's going to give the poor Black community money.
Yeah.
And that's their way, in their mind and their spirit, that they think that they're balancing it out.
And they don't need money. They just need control of their own life. They need the government to stop stepping on their neck.
But the sad thing is that, and when you say they, you're talking about who? The poor Black community?
Yeah, the poor Black community, or the poor community in general, because it's the same deal if you got poor white people in West Virginia. The government's stepping on their necks, and it's these Democrat-run areas where they're doing that. It's like, I'm going to give you this free stuff, but, you can't. Oh, if the husband moves back in their house, you're going to lose it. So now you're going to stay single. You're going to continue the cycle. All kinds of things like that. It's like, people need hands up, especially with the situations that they've been put in because of these policies. but they don't need handouts because it just keeps them there. You want mobility. You don't want people stuck in a fucking shitty situation. Excuse my French, I curse a lot. But, you want mobility for people. You want people to use their talents, and you want people to be judged by their abilities, by their character. Like if they really believed all the stuff that they say they believe, they would be pushing for that. But they don't. They just want to make themselves feel better, like you said, and then they can just write it off.
Yeah, it's like Manhattan's a great example of what we're talking about. You got these people in Manhattan. They're all like, yuppie liberals, and they're like, oh, everything is okay. If you're black, we love you. If you're gay, we love you. If you're bi, we love you. If you're transsexual, we love you. If you're anything, any color, we love you. We love you.
But the problem with that is that soft racism you're talking about, because they love you just because you're those things. What if you're a gay person, but you're a complete piece of you know what? You should be judged like that, not because you're gay. You should be judged for who you are, not.
But the kicker is that those same people, those same like elitist liberals, like Upper East Side Manhattan, Upper West Side Manhattan, if you're black and you're walking around their neighborhood at night, they're looking at you like, what the hell? What are you doing here? Or if you just happen to run across some money and you move into one of those buildings, they're literally checking you. Like, do you live here? What? Who are you? What's going on?
I could be a doctor over at New York Hospital.
Right. And I've seen this stuff firsthand. So basically, they're fake. But they've fooled enough people, and especially the elitist Democrat politician liberals. I don't even like calling them liberals, but
I don't think they fooled the leaders of minority groups in this country. I just think that the leaders of those groups are on board, making their money. I think
they're definitely making their money off of it. It's a joke. Like near me, there's this pastor, and I knew he was kind of a joke anyway. But when Obama first jumped on the scene and he's running for president, and everybody's pretending like the Messiah had come, and the water levels were going to go down, and the temperatures were going to like stabilize, and we were all going to have wonderful health care, and blah blah blah. The Messiah was here. This particular pastor literally had like DNC handout, like I don't mean handouts like welfare handouts, but he had like DNC like pamphlets in the lobby of the church, right? So I went there with my grandfather once to the church, and I saw that. I'm like, wow, like this guy is really like promoting like politics out of the church, which is supposed to be a no-no, right? But he's doing it anyway. But I get that people were really thirsty for a black hero, and the media marketed this guy as this wonderful, quote unquote, black president, totally ignoring that his mom was white, totally ignoring.
And then it's related to two of the last three presidents.
I mean, it basically like made him out to be like this messianic figure.
Sure.
So like I get why a lot of people got emotionally caught up in that, especially if you were around in the 60s and 50s. As a black person, like this was like, wow, this is happening. So a lot of them didn't look at his policies. They didn't look at who was funding him. They didn't look at like what he was about and where he came from. So they ran with it. They didn't care that he was as a pastor, like this guy obviously didn't care that, this guy was pushing views that were clearly against the gospel. It was all about the fact that he was a specific color or half of a specific color, however you want to look at it. But so I drove by that church a few days ago, and I saw, how some churches have like a billboard kind of in the front where they'll have like a scripture or a message for like people driving by.
Yeah. Or like turn off on a highway.
Right. Yeah. So basically, I was driving by there the other day, and on the board of the church, the same pastor, the billboard in the front of the church, it said Jesus was a refugee. And I'm like, this guy is really a nut job liberal retard. I mean, he's still literally pushing this political stuff from the walls of the church. First of all, Jesus was not a refugee. He was born in Israel. Yeah, he was born in Israel. He walked around Israel. He spent most of his time in Israel. He wasn't a refugee. Jesus didn't come from Egypt or Italy. Like, he was born in Bethlehem, which is Israel. He was never a refugee. But these people just make things up. They just make things up. Like, you've got people constantly saying on the internet and verbally, "Oh, Trump was a draft dodger. He was never drafted. How could you dodge if you were never drafted?"
Yeah.
Like, they just make things up.
And then they accuse everybody else of making things up. They accuse. Right. They made Obama a messianic figure, like you said, and then they accuse all Trump supporters of following him as if he was some sort of god, and we're like, no, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, a few years ago, like, I ran across this freaking clueless Democrat. That's most of them. He's saying, how Trump was a draft dodger. So I'm like, no. You have to get drafted to dodge. And the fact that Trump was disqualified medically for shin splints means that he didn't dodge, because when you get your and the draft has been over since
76
or 75, something like that. You might be right. I was thinking 74ish or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's basically the same thing. 74, 75, 76, same crap. But basically, before our time, it was done away with. But if you research it, you'll see that first you had the report for your physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing you did when you got your draft paperwork or your lottery number or whatever. Like, you reported for your physical.
Mm-hmm.
If you were disqualified as a result of your physical, you were disqualified and could not go. A draft dodger reports to their physical, doesn't get disqualified, and is supposed to report to duty, and they don't report, then they dodge.
Yeah.
But because he was disqualified medically, these nut jobs keep saying he was a draft dodger. The funny thing about it is that the American left and left-wing Democrats have always been against the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So, you're dissing a guy for not being in it, but you never supported it, and your people that you look up to always dissed the war, and one of them actually took pictures with the enemy. So they talk out of both sides of their mouth. On one side, you're just like, hey, he's a draft dodger. He avoided the Vietnam War. But at the same time, you guys were, the liberal left were burning draft cards and protesting against the war. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say...
But they think they can. They think they can.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They think they can, and there's so many people that accept it. And I'm like, I know some really smart people, some decent people, churchgoers that are Democrats. They're generally actual liberals. They're not leftists. But even them are they are buying into this stuff, and it's all based on hate.
Yeah. Well, I always say this is the longest temper tantrum in the history of the United States, the temper tantrum of Hillary losing. Grown people are having we're going into our 4th year of the temper tantrum. It's you know what? You're going to lose some elections. You're going to win some. Eventually, they'll win one. They just need to not choose a nut job communist who wants to make taxpayers pay for transgender surgeries. You can't win that way. You can win California and New York. Yeah, you can do that. But I mean, the amount of drugs and debauchery in those places, any nut job can win those places.
AOC.
It's it's ridiculous. But I mean, you're gonna lose some, you're gonna win some. You can't have a temper tantrum for years because you lost one. I think the problem is that they started to feel entitled, because they're big into entitlements. Mm-hmm. They started to feel entitled to the presidency. And then when their party lost it, they totally lost their SHIT. You know.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Another problem is that they and a lot of Republicans and Americans in general are guilty of this. They give the presidency too much power in their minds.
Yep.
It's powerful, but it's more powerful on the foreign side than it is on the domestic side.
Yes.
Because on the domestic side,
for a good reason too. It's the purpose.
Right. And that's the way the framers set it up, because they had run away from a system of a king. So they set it up so that you need the House and Senate and the presidency to get anything done on the domestic side that would change the people's lives in a major way.
But you also have to be able to respond quickly to threats to the border, and
right.
and to be able to grab positive things as the world changes. So you need the executive branch to be able to do that.
So the problem is that a lot of Americans don't know what their government is supposed to do and what is not supposed to do. They don't know what each branch is supposed to do and what each branch is not supposed to do.
Some of them don't even know how many there are.
Right. It's sad. So, I mean, and you can see that with the drama of today. Like, people have no idea how little power the House of Representatives has in the grand scheme of government. It's the least powerful branch of Congress.
Yeah,
it has the least amount of power.
It has one very big duty, but it's got a lot of power to shape, which is the budget. But it still has to be passed by the Senate. Still has to be signed by the president.
Right.
You know,
the Senate can always shut them down. Always.
That's the point of having this. That's why there's only 2 senators for each state. That's why it's equal.
Exactly. And another thing is that, like, whether people want to recognize it or not, like, and
we're not a democracy.
Well, that too, but I mentioned this a few days ago online, is that the House of Representatives is the most transient branch of Congress.
Yes.
It's more of a revolving door than the Senate by a long shot.
Yeah.
House of Representative members are changed constantly. You get some lucky ones that are there forever, but usually they're just corrupt scumbags, and
they're always corrupt.
Done away with a long time ago. But,
they're always corrupt if they stay for a long time. Because just look at their pay and look how much they're worth.
Right. It's a no-brainer. But these people these days, not everybody, but a lot of people are so silly they can't see that. I mean, they want to, like, run their mouths and protest and scream to see a guy's tax returns who was rich before he got to DC, but they don't mention wanting to see someone's tax returns who came there broke, makes about $150 a year. Now they're worth like $400 million, and they've only been there for a few years. Like, that's whose tax returns you need to see. You know?
Exactly.
This is just logical stuff, man. You know?
It really is. It really is.
It's not really that deep. I mean, I can take it deep, you know, just because I've studied the Constitution in depth, and I've studied how the machine of the U.S. government is supposed to work in depth. But it's most of the stuff's really not that deep, you know.
So there's a couple other things I want to talk to you about, because I don't want to run too long. But someone that was trained as a lawyer, okay. Now you're moving into dentistry.
Yeah.
So you have studied the Constitution in depth.
Yeah.
And I imagine you were in New York, so you studied that. Is that where you took your LSAT?
No. So, well, the LSAT is just an entrance exam for law school. It's kind of like a gatekeeper test that says whether you can get in or not, like the MCAT for doctors. But yeah, so I did nothing in New York City at all. As a matter of fact, in New York, I don't know if you knew this, but in New York City, I pretty much was in college, and I worked in a local construction union, local number 85.
Okay.
Yeah, I did an apprenticeship. I got my journeyman's card and everything. So I like to work with my hands too, not just a white collar guy.
Yeah, you just have the brains to be a white collar guy, so why not?
Yeah, which is partially why dentistry is a turn on to me, because it's like it's like a white collar level brain, but you're still working with your hands, and it's the same with surgeons.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Ben Carson, fantastic guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He actually won. We give out an award called the Valentine Award. It's anybody that either shuts down somebody really stupid or does something, momentous. We try to keep it up. And yeah, so Ben won that when he basically broke down giving out money to illegals, and how he would instead use that for what we already have for the public good. Yeah. And he got attacked on the Hill, and he just shut them down, and it was fantastic. So yeah, he won the award for that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and the crazy thing is that these people, they're so obsessed with calling everybody a racist. Like that's their no-brainer go-to, label to shut people down who have a different idea or who see things differently. But if anybody ever has the time to look into it, you can go online and look at the forms yourself. You don't have to take my word. Look at the immigration paperwork for Switzerland and Canada. Those are just two examples. And look
Canada's
at the questions,
extremely tough. Yeah.
Right. Look at the questions they ask people. They ask you how much money you have in your account. Okay. They ask you what education you have, what trades you have, what certifications you have. And what they do is they basically reject people that they think are going to move to their country and end up on welfare. And basically, that's where the president is taking us. And for some reason, it's considered racist, which is just dumb to me. It's just common sense. Like you don't tell the world, hey, come here and I'll give you free stuff. Like that's how you bankrupt your country. Yeah. It's bad enough that we're giving away all this foreign aid, which I'd like to see stop. If I was in control, we'd give away pretty much no foreign aid besides military aid to Israel. And we'd give away aid only in situations where there's a major catastrophe like the earthquake in Haiti. Then I'd say, yeah, let's load up a bunch of naval ships, bring bottled water, medical supplies, food, absolutely, clothing, whatever. But constantly writing checks to like countries, no.
That are corrupt as hell.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. What a lot of people don't understand about the quote-unquote aid that goes to Israel is that a lot of that aid is military, and it's set up in a way that even though it's aid, it's money that they spend on weaponry that they get from American companies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a circle that comes right back around to us.
It's like throwing more money into the tax return to boost the economy.
Basically.
And our number one export is weapons, and it has been for a very long time. So a lot of jobs.
Well, it's big money in that.
Yeah, and think about every goddamn component is made with basic materials. So it's all got to be fabricated and fashioned. So it's a lot of jobs we're talking about. There's a lot of companies, including small companies, that are making out on that. So it's not exactly a just give it out.
Well,
and not know where it goes.
I don't have a problem with it because I've served and I still have that mentality that some people need to die and sometimes we have to kill them. Plain and simple. Like some people need to be killed. Some groups need to be killed. People might not want to hear it, but the Nazis are one group. I'm not talking about how these morons use the term Nazi in a trendy way.
Yeah, no. We're talking about real social, national socialism.
Right. The National Socialist Party of Germany that was putting Jews in ovens. Like they needed to be killed. ISIS needed to be killed. Despite what a lot of these morons think, I think the communists in Southeast Asia needed to be killed. The communists in North Korea, when we were fighting for South Korea, they needed to be killed. Like a lot of groups, the Taliban, they need to be killed. So I don't have any problem with you know.
Well, because you know what, it's nothing. There's
military.
nothing wrong with taking care of your own.
Yeah.
You know, like don't risk your own children's future to be politically correct. I can never understand that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like,
you know, modern day liberalism doesn't make any sense at all. But for them, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be. You know,
it's got to make them feel good. It's got to make them feel good.
It's all about emotions and feelings. It's not about what actually works. You know,
so talking about emotions and feelings, there's something I got to ask you. Is Steve Harris the greatest bass player of all time?
In the metal world, undoubtedly.
Yes,
undoubtedly.
Yes,
but you know, we got to differentiate because there's different levels of bass. You know, there's different styles.
Bootsy Collins is you know, the funk. You got what's the dude from Duran Duran? He's friggin' awesome.
I don't know his name, but I do like him. But you know, there's a lot of guys in the R&B side from the '70s who were just killer. The whole slapping and popping invention, but that's a different style of music. But yeah, as far as metal goes, I think Steve Harris is probably the best to ever do it. Everybody likes Cliff Burton, which I do too, but we didn't really get to see.
We didn't get to see him evolve.
Yeah, that he could have done because he only was on what 3 albums.
3 albums.
1, 2, 3 albums. You know, so.
Cliff Burton was great, but Steve Harris is just, I mean, from that punk metal stuff in the late '70s all the way through to now he's doing that progressive metal. Yeah,
Harris is kind of just like he plays the bass like it's a guitar. He just puts in more work than most bass players.
Yes, yeah. I model a lot of my writing and a lot of my playing off him. I can't play as well as him. But I've modeled a lot of my style when it comes to doing metal stuff off him because I mean, like he'll do an entire harmony throughout a song, and it just, you know, they have 3 guitars, but it sounds like they got 20.
Yeah. It's and the crazy thing is that he is like, it's basically his band. Like he is the executive. Like he's the one who started it. He's the one that writes so many songs, writes so many arrangements. I mean, he's more than just a bass player.
No, he's a total artist. Yeah,
I mean, Iron Maiden is his baby. That's actually my favorite metal band, as you probably know.
Yeah, mine too. Absolutely.
I mean, I had this conversation with somebody the other day that was trying to tell me Metallica is a better metal band. I'm like, you sound like an American, and I get it.
They're great. They're a great band, but you know what though? They kind of left metal in a way for a lot of years.
For a while. And the thing is that like Maiden never changed for anybody. They didn't try to go pop.
They just evolved.
Yeah, but they always come back to being Maiden, and that's it. You know, like they
can't mistake it.
They just never left being Maiden. Like you still have that Steve Harris, that gallop kind of bass that he likes to play, galloping, high energetic.
Dave Murray's always going up in the clouds over the top of that.
Right. Adrian Smith's always got some sick solos.
Yep.
Bruce Dickinson is, to me, I want to say he's the best metal vocalist, but I'm such a huge Ozzy fan. I'm such a huge Dio fan. I don't want to say it, but
vocals. Vocals is style. Like you can like a style better, but I don't know if you can actually go and say he's the best metal vocalist because
it's tough.
I mean, but when it comes to writing and things, it's a little bit different. Like what were you saying about Maiden always being Maiden? Blaze Bayley. A lot of people didn't like him. Some people did. They did that one album. They did number 11. I didn't mind that at all. Or was it it was 12, right? Or 11.
Yeah.
And he was fine. But it was no matter who they have in vocals, it's still Maiden.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, like the Blaze Bayley stuff, I just can't, bro. I could do Paul Di'Anno.
I love Paul Di'Anno. Oh,
I love
that stuff.
I love the Killers album. I love the Iron Maiden title album. I mean, and that's Maiden, you know.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Dickinson kind of just came right on.
Took it somewhere else. Took it to the next level.
But the Blaze stuff, I'm like, nah. I can get into some of the melodics, but I just can't.
I'm not throwing it on to listen to either.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not going to turn it off necessarily.
To me, it's kind of disappointing. It was kind of heartbreaking. Like, how is there no Bruce? Like, how was there no Bruce? And it was just like, no, I can't really do this. And I just didn't listen. Then when he came back, I started buying the albums again.
And they put out some great albums. The one with the Wicker Man on it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we both had a crush on one singer from the 80s.
Talking about Belinda Carlisle.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Go-Go's. Like my daughter sings Go-Go songs now, and I'm like, I hope she doesn't turn out like them. But
yeah, I have my little guy singing some of their songs too. You know that car. You know that song, "Stuck in My Car." That's why the word "car" came out of my mouth. You know that song, "Stuck in My Car," that they did. It probably came out around like late '90s.
No, I don't know that one. Oh, yeah, it's all right. Here we go. Now I got something to listen to.
It was never really popular, but it's a song called "Stuck in My Car," and they did it at a live free concert in Manhattan in Central Park in like 2000. It's on YouTube.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I had my son singing that, my little guy singing that when he was like 4 or 5 years old. I just like that song. I don't know why, man. Something about it.
Oh man, I was a big Deborah Harry fan. Deborah Harry was from the Blondie was my first crush.
Oh yeah.
Until I saw Belinda Carlisle, then I just threw her to the curb.
You got to follow Deborah on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few tribute accounts to her for her too on there. It's crazy.
Cool.
She's got.
Yeah, I'm not on Instagram much. I started posting a little bit more, but
yeah, it's less drama than Facebook. That's for sure.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Because it's not an argumentative format, you know.
Facebook is absolutely an argumentative format. That's why I love to I just love to piss people off. I say things that are that don't mean anything because I just know that people are going to emotionally lose their friggin' minds.
Yeah, I had a friggin' ghetto degenerate threaten me a few days ago because I said something politically he didn't agree with. I was like, dude, you know, you need to really check yourself.
Oh yeah, I have some boxing match that's happening in springtime, I think.
Oh wow.
I was like, screw it, let's videotape it. I win some, I lose some. I don't care.
Crazy.
All right, dude. Well, it was great talking to you. I think I got plenty. I don't want to hold you up, but
yeah, no problem, man. Have a good night. I'm gonna try to get a little bit of stuff done here before I go to sleep.
Cool. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Ciao.
Machine.